Hello and welcome to Simplified. This is PowerDrift. Simplified is a simple idea. We take a complicated automotive concept and we break it down into its constituent pieces so you can understand it easily. Now would also be a good time to hit the subscribe button because India's best automotive content, it's right here on PowerDrift. Do hit the bell notification icon so that this content can come to you directly. Today we're talking about helmet laws, and what has changed recently on June 1 is that ISI-marked helmets are no longer available for sale in India. As a user, this does not change anything for you. Non-ISI helmets were illegal anyway, and you have read in the news various police departments have carried out drives that attack the idea of a substandard helmet, and they take these helmets away from you, they fine you, they break the helmets and whatever, and none of that has changed. So if you were using a helmet that is either substandard or like to call it super standard, in either case, they are still illegal. But what the helmet quality control order now changes is it is now an offense to sell non-ISI helmets, which means people who import these helmets and stock these helmets are liable for fines and imprisonment, and that's a big change. This law was promulgated about a year and a half or 2 years ago. The biggest problem that this law created was the change in the actual helmet standard. And what they changed, one was they lowered the performance criteria for helmets, which means helmets needed to do less to pass the Indian standard than, for example, the ECE, which ironically, the Indian standard is based on. They did this by lowering the heights from which weights are dropped on helmets to test the forces that they can absorb. Along with this, and because of the lower performance standard, they also reduced the available weight of the helmet to a maximum of 1200 grams or 1.2 kilos. This was a big problem because the global helmet standards like the Japanese one, which is supposed to be the tightest in the world, ECE, which is the most popular one in the world, and Indonesia standard, etc., they all center around 1500 grams as the maximum permissible weight of a helmet. And remember, this clause doesn't include all the parts of the helmet, it's basically the shell and the padding. But they did amend that standard later, and therefore our weight went back from 1.2 kilos proposed to 1.5 kilos, 1500 grams, which is what it was earlier. So in theory, there's nothing stopping an importer from getting an international helmet and selling them from India. And since the Indian standard is a slightly weaker standard in terms of the force required than global standards, any ECE helmet should easily sail through the Indian standard test. But what the law now says is that if you're going to sell the helmet in India, it must be BIS tested, it must be ISI certified, and that's the challenge. So companies like RI, AGV, Shoei, Schubert, whoever, if they want to sell their helmets in India, now they must legally represent themselves to BIS as an accredited helmet manufacturer, get their helmets tested and earn the ISI mark. Now, this causes a logistics problem because obviously if, for example, I were to be an international helmet manufacturer of renown and I wanted to come to India officially under the new law, I have to spend the 8 months to a year it takes to go to BIS, register myself, and then send my helmets for testing to BIS and therefore earn the ISI certification. Now, there is a little bit of a catch here. Until recently, ISI used to function on the honor system just like the DOT does today, which means that the BIS actually tests a remarkably small number of helmets every year, but the law says any helmet manufacturer, when asked, must have the proof that their helmets meet the standard, and that implies that they must have a lab where they can prove conclusively that their helmets meet the standard. So people like AGV India, Forma, before this and all of these, Studs, Steelbird, you name it, they all have labs where they can take a helmet and show a BIS official if questioned that yes, their helmet meets the standard. That's why it's called the honor system. The onus of proving it is on the manufacturer, and the idea is that you trust them to do this well and to meet the standard proactively. What this law was also supposed to do was move helmets from that idea of certification to the mandatory schedule of certification, which means in the mandatory schedule, helmet will have to be sent to BIS for testing, and then BIS will independently test them and then issue ISI certificates. I am unclear from my research as to whether this has also happened or not. I am not sure whether this is still an honor system or we've moved to the mandatory schedule for helmet testing yet. In summary, what this means to you as a user, it changes nothing for you. Law enforcement in this front will not be done by the BIS or any of these people. It is still a matter with the traffic police and the police. And whatever they've done so far, they will continue to do. When they can identify that there is a problem with your helmet, they will obviously fine you. On the other hand, if you are one of the few people in the country who are distributors or representatives of international helmet companies, you're now in a little bit of trouble. However, despite the problems that it causes for the riders, I don't actually think that this law is an unreasonable ask. For example, if Steelbird wanted to enter Japan and Japan said you must meet a standard, and to do that you have to certify with the Japanese certification agency, I don't think that's an unreasonable request. In the very same way, if a Japanese company, an Italian company or an American company want to sell their helmets here, the Indian government saying, please come to us and just ensure that you meet our standard, and that has a paperwork process and labs, whatever. Just show us that all of this is available. I don't think that's an unreasonable request. Obviously, the process is long, the process can be expensive, and the process is a little bit tedious, but that's the challenge of entering the world's largest two-wheeler market, where obviously more people are hoping to wear helmets than anywhere else on earth in time. I hope this clarifies things for you. Thank you so much for watching. This is Simplified on PowerDrift. If you have questions or comments about this, please do leave us a comment. We'll try and get back to you as much detail as possible. And if there are any topics that you would like us to cover, do leave us a comment. And if you think your friends will find this useful, I do urge you to please share this with your friends. Thank you so much for watching. This is PowerDrift. This is Simplified.